Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Two for Talking podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. I've got comedian Joe Bartnick and Josh Yohe with The Athletic alongside. And gentlemen, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times for Tristan Jarry. As Joe and I were saying before the show, all our good thoughts on Tristan Jarry went out the window real quick. And, Sidney Crosby apparently is destined to have every milestone this year ruined by awful goaltending. Because his 600th goal, we know how that went, and then his breaking Gretzky's record. What was the mood like, Josh, in the locker room with the captain and after that drubbing?
First of all, good evening, gentlemen, and hello to everybody who's watching. Sorry we're a little later than usual. My fault today. Crazy things going on. But anyway, it's funny you bring that up, Corey. I was in the locker room in Buffalo after he broke the record. The Penguins lost 7-3, and I went up to him. I shook his hand. I said, "Hey, that's a hell of a thing you did. Congratulations." And he said, "Thank you." And I said, "Hey, you got to stop breaking. You're setting these milestones when you have these horseshit performances like this." And he looks at me. He goes, "Oh, Utah." I'm like, "Yeah, because they lost 6-1 to Utah when he scored his 600th goal." He just kind of shook his head. But it's funny being around him right now. Everybody knows he's the ultimate competitor, that this season is driving him crazy on some level. And yet, he's such of an impressive human being. I think just like psychologically, he's actually been in a really good mood and like very even more pleasant to deal with than usual. I don't want to say he's at peace with the season that they're having, but I think he's just such of a healthy human being that he's not letting himself get too low. He's always staying positive. You can see by the way he reacted with his game-winning goal yesterday against Ottawa. Like he's still enjoying playing hockey, even though his team is oftentimes very, very difficult to watch.
Oh, they are difficult to watch, and I still do it. I mean, what a milestone! And I tell you, I heard the first period on the radio. Of course, I went back and watched it. But Joe Brand, who I love, he kind of downplayed the emotion in the arena yesterday. And then I watched it on television. He got a standing ovation. It was a very healthy Sidney Crosby ovation, I thought.
Yeah. It was. Oh, no question. It was. I think maybe he's gotten so many of those standing ovations over the years that even for Joe, who's in his first year, it's almost becoming commonplace. But it isn't. I don't remember, and we're going to get into the young guys with Koivunen and McGroarty coming up. It finally gives us something to focus on. But for most of the season, like other than Sid, I mean, what has there been for Penguins fans to focus on? I've written so many articles about him, and I thought, gee, am I writing about him too much? And I said, no, that's who people want to read about. And then you look, the Penguins have won 30 games this year. He has the game-winning goal in 7 of them.
That's insane.
I mean, that's unbelievable. He's 7 out of 30. So about a quarter of the time he's scoring the game-winning goals. All is not lost in this season, even though they're not making the playoffs, and it's been hard to watch at times because you still get to watch him. And years from now, when he's gone, I promise you'll appreciate it and think, man, I wish I could still watch Sidney Crosby play hockey because he's still playing at an unbelievable level. Joe, the game he played yesterday against Ottawa, he only had 1 point, the game-winning goal. He was unbelievable the whole game. Like, he is so locked in since the Four Nations break, and we thought he might, hit a little slide after that because we know he was hurt, and he had to have been out of gas, and the season's pretty much over, so you're thinking – he might not get this record. He might, this is going to be tough. And he's been out of his mind good since then. It's been something to watch.
Well, just think about the brilliance of him, and thank God he's not in the NBA. He would have shut it down after the 4 days. The team's not in it. Oh, he's going to just take the rest of the year off. Why wear him down? He's old. That's the way they do it. No, you know how much I despise pirate talk. And an old guy got into sauna today, and he's all like, rah, the Pirates. And then this younger man to break up that hellhole just goes, you got to love what Sidney Crosby's doing. And I go, you're damn right about that.
Mm-hmm.
And the old guy made another statement. I go, never, ever, ever equate the Penguins with the Pirates.
That's right.
But yes, Sir Sidney absolutely putting on a show. This whole season, but definitely was he on a 10-game point streak since Four Nations, I believe?
Well, he's on a 10-game scoring streak, and since Four Nations, oh God, I wrote it yesterday. I think he has points in 13 of his last 15 games, something like that. He has the most points in the league of anybody since Four Nations. And just in terms of the eye test, Joe, like every facet of his game is perfect right now. He's so locked in, and we saw him do this last year down the stretch when he got really hot and they almost made the playoffs. And I am convinced that it's almost like a muscle memory thing. His body is conditioned to ramp it up this time of year before the playoffs. And even if they're not going to make the playoffs, I don't think he knows any other way. So he just starts playing even better when the weather gets a little warmer outside. And we've seen it year after year, but he's putting on quite a show right now.
And I'm not good at math, and I definitely trust your math, but it almost seems like he scored more than 7 of the 30 some odd. I mean, what game hasn't he had the game-winning goal, or at least assisted Raquel and Rust? That the top line has to have accounted for all but maybe 4 Gino goals, I would think, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure he's set up all. If you add assist on the game-winning goals, I'm sure he's at way more than 50% of those game-winning goals. They're as close to a one-man team as a team can be. Thankfully for him, he still has Rust and Raquel to play with, but other than that, it's tough. But I think it speaks to his competitiveness, to his professionalism, to his greatness, that even in down years, like, his level of play literally hasn't dropped. He's still Sidney Crosby, and I think he understands, not in an arrogant way, but I think he understands people still come to see him play. And he still wants to put on a show every night, and he always does.
It's the Joe DiMaggio. When they asked Joe, why did you run out that ground to the second base? And he goes, because there's someone in the upper deck that never saw Joe DiMaggio play before.
That's right.
I mean, it's in Sid and Joe D. I mean, 2 of the all-time greats, and 2 people I have plaques and statues and genuflect to.
You always manage to find the Italians to get the Italians mentioned. I love that about you. I know.
Hey, if I compare anybody to Joe D, that's the ultimate.
Yeah.
It's fun, and I always wear my, what would Sid do when I try to be good.
Yeah. The energy though in the building yesterday. I took my dad and I took my kids to the game, and like just watching the game, like being there live and getting to view it. And by the way, I took them in the Rivers Casino.
Starting them young.
That makes me a good dad or a bad dad, but that's where we got plopped down. I didn't have a choice in the matter. But anyways, watching the game, to me, it was just like, you're seeing Sid set the example for the young guys, and I know we want to get into the young guys too. But he takes that role, I think, very seriously. Like all the people that have talked about, is Sid going to get traded? Is Sid going to ask to get out of here? And Josh, you have said over and over again, and I mean, you would know better than anybody outside of his family, like, he's not going anywhere, and he wants to be here when they're good again. And that, to me, was the takeaway from yesterday, is that, like, I think he understood that game is important for when they get good again, or how they get good again.
Yeah, it's funny. In the locker room now, they have Rucker McGroarty sitting right beside Sid and Billy Koivunen, and it's just on the other side of McGroarty. So they're right in the corner with Sid. And I wish everyone could have been at practice on Saturday. After practice, McGroarty was kind of holding court. He's a very personable young man, very likable. And he was telling the story about his first and only AHL fight when he absolutely got his ass kicked. And he was just joking about how embarrassing it was, how he got slaughtered. And Sid was just sitting there with a grin on his face, just enjoying the story the whole time. And then Sid says to him, was the other guy bigger at least? And McGroarty said, no. And Sid was like, oh, that really hurts. And Sid just like, he was so clearly enjoying having these young guys around him and just getting to know them, and the energy. You could feel the energy in practice that day, just when those two showed up. And Sid acknowledged it as much. And he has a long history of taking care of the young guys when they show up. When Brian Rust and Connor Sherry were rookies in 2016, he was taking them out to dinner every night during the playoffs, during the Stanley Cup run, as that, they were new to Pittsburgh. They didn't really know anybody here. He, along with being the captain of the team that was on a Stanley Cup run, took the time to take care of those guys on a personal level. That's just who he is. He's thrilled that they're here. And I think everybody in the fan base is too, quite honestly.
Well, we always talk about what it means to play with Sid, to be on the team with Sid, and also, his sergeant in arms, Brian Rust, because Rusty learned at Sid's table, and everyone talks about how he's the next leader on the team, how he kind of leads the way. As you don't have to be the greatest player on earth, but you can still follow the Brian Rust way, if you will. I just want to get back to Sid's game on Sunday. I mean, he took on Zub. I mean, he threw 3 or 4 straight right hands. They looked pretty good, and he just got the rough. And wasn't it like impending doom when he wasn't on the ice, like, oh, well, we're not going to score. I mean, and they held on long enough to get him back on the ice. I just thought that was going to be the death now when he wasn't out there. If that doesn't say anything about the Penguins, it's like, oh, man, if Sid's not out here, we're not getting nothing.
It felt like whenever Ben would get hurt, and you're like, well, it's all over now. Like, I mean, that's how it felt.
Oh, that's a good point. And by the way, that was a really dirty slash that Zub threw on Sid. I thought that could have hurt him. That was a nasty slash right to the arm. And I have to say, I owe Rutger an apology. I wrote in my article that I didn't really like that nobody came to his defense after that. But Rutger, apparently, I didn't notice it there live. His skate blade had come out of his skate, so he literally was paralyzed on the ice and couldn't move. I suspect he's a pretty big kid. I think he would have done something about that, because we don't like when people don't step in when Sid gets attacked like that. But speaking of that, the result was so predictable. Like when Sid got mad and went to the penalty box, we all looked at each other in the press box. We know how this one's about to end. And he fired that. I haven't seen him shoot a puck like that, Joe, in a long time. That was an absolute cannon for the game winner.
That was the anger shot that Gino in Philly.
Yeah,
he just turned around and fired it from 2 feet away. It goes to say something, though. When Rutger has a broken skate, not a broken blade, a broken skate, and he's still more effective than 90% of the Penguins right now. Like you couldn't even tell.
No, I mean, let's talk about those two, Joe, because I thought Rutger was good on Saturday. I think his skating's better. Like you can still see like the speed of the game. Like he'll adapt, but I think you can see at the NHL level he's just a step behind sometimes, and it's going to take some time. But you can see all the talent.
He had a rush though, where I don't know, I know my skating is so limited, but sometimes you get in a groove on the ice. He got in a groove on one rush and made it a 2-on-1.
Yes.
And he ended up gripping his stick a little too hard, or it bounced on him. I don't know what the ice was, but he was right there. He was right there. Speed-wise, he was right there. I thought he had a really nice game. I thought he played the puck well. I thought he was, to quote the great man, he was on the right side of the puck a lot.
Yes, he was.
And so nothing wrong there. And Mike even said as much, that he thought he played a really good game. And I thought Koivunen looked like an NHL top 6 winger.
Yeah.
I thought he played. I actually liked his game more than McGroarty's, just in the sense that he seemed to be more in the mix without playing with Sid and Rust. I thought he was. I thought he played great. I really was. He popped out, and I'm gonna let you say your piece. And I have one more thing to come back, and I'm gonna make a point off of your point.
Well, I will say Koivunen, there's something dynamic about his game. Like he can really skate, and you can see the hockey senses there. There's even though he's not a big kid, there's a feistiness to him too. Like he goes right to the net. There's kind of a fearlessness to his game. Like I was really impressed with him. I've seen very little of him. And man, I thought he'd be good. I've seen the numbers that he's put up. I see the highlights, but to see him in person and playing with Raquel is not even a natural center. Like he really impressed. I mean, just the way he can skate. And Raquel told me before the game, he said, wait until you see this kid. He said, he's going to be a really good top 6 player. You watch. He said, he's got all the talent in the world. And McGroarty, no, I thought he was good. And what I like about him, like he just always knows where to go. He's got that call it hockey IQ, whatever you want to call it. He's got that gene. He just knows where to go, how to get himself open. He's going to score a lot of goals in this league, just plopping himself in front of the net. He's a big kid. He goes to the net. He understands who he is as a player. He'll keep getting better and better. It's early. We'll see how good they become, but I have a good feeling about both of them. I think they're both good NHL players sooner rather than later.
I do too, and I loved your point on McGroarty, how he was always in the right spot, even defensively.
Yes.
And on the forecheck and on whatever the trap or whatever the get back here to cut this lane out. I thought he played a very smart game, and I love the feistiness of Koivunen. I love guys that get between the circles. That's where you score goals. Even at his size, you got to do what he did. But here's the point I wanted to let you get your pop in, though, is this. How many times have we heard the old 2-9er and other guys, and us included, the guys come up, and it's like they're just happy to get a sweater and get the per diem. Mm-hmm. They don't make an impact. You don't remember they were on the ice. Those two guys came in the door, and bam, they made an impact on the game. They were noticeable guys, Josh and Corey, and I thought that was fantastic.
Oh, they were fantastic. Did you see Josh Getzoff's? I don't know if he tweeted it, but I heard on the post-game show driving home, they said that he texted it or tweeted it, and he said, "Boy, wouldn't this Koivunen guy look real good on the Carolina Hurricanes right about now?"
Well, he
And
kind of plays like a hurricane. In fact, you can tell he was groomed in their system a little bit,
yeah,
just the way he plays. But no, he jumped out at me. Just the way he moves. I mean, the wheels are legit. That much is clear. I like both of them, and it's a really good point, Joe, about, and we know there are veterans on this team. Not all of them, but there are some guys who are, just there for the paycheck right now. We all know it. You can tell by how some guys play, and these two, like, they aren't going to be that way. It's obvious to me just being in that locker room, watching them the last few days. They're not arrogant, but like they feel like they belong, and they feel comfortable, and I think they're already accepted by the important people in that locker room. Like Crosby and Rust and Raquel love these two guys. I asked Brian Rust, I said, "What do you think about them going right to the top six? That's a little unusual for prospects. Usually they have to work their way up." And Rusty said, "No, that's exactly where they should be, because they'll play better with good players because they're that good." And Raquel basically said the same thing about both of them. I was almost taken aback by how much conviction they both had when they said, "Yeah, put them on the top six. They're good." So I know for Penguins fans, you're struggling to the finish line here. I know it's tough, but it gives you something to watch the last few games. There's just such of an excitement, a hopefulness, right? I mean, hope sells for people. Now you got these young guys that can make you feel a little bit better about the future.
Well, the bottom line is they brought excitement. I mean, almost every time Koivunen was on the ice, something good happened or something exciting happened. There was a scoring chance. We could go a period and a half and not see a scoring chance if Sid took too many defensive draws. I mean, really, there was excitement. And now, no matter what, Malkin, when he comes back, is going to have a scoring winger of some sort.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know what they will do with the lines. It'll be really interesting to see when he comes back. Do you put Raquel up at the top line and let Gino play with both young kids? Do you leave Rucker with Sid maybe and have Gino play with Koivunen and Raquel? That would be my guess. But no, they've got some options now, and I'm curious to see how. I would love to see Koivunen and Gino play together.
Yeah.
I think Koivunen is just so smart, and Gino's actually an easy guy to play with. Gino's easier to play with for a lot of players than Sid. So I bet Koivunen could fit in with Gino real quick, and also maybe it's a little bit of a preview for next season, guys. I mean, Koivunen and McGroarty in all likelihood are going to start next season with the Penguins. Yeah, they're going to go back to Wilkes-Barre and play in the playoffs this spring, but that might be it in the AHL for those two guys. I would not be surprised.
Well, I mean, it has to be. I've been begging for this since November.
Mm-hmm.
Where are these guys? Finally, it's not these old guys just picking up a paycheck. There's some energy, and some of these guys have played okay, but you can't. I mean, there's just no reason for Hayes to do anything except open the door on shift changes.
They got the backup goalie to do that. So
yeah, and it's interesting the decision being made when it was. Maybe the plan all along was to give these two guys a little bit of a cameo in the last few games of the year. I don't know, but and I know there are some injuries, but they were so pathetic in those games in Tampa and Buffalo. I mean, those were really horrific losses. The kind of losses that management often will do something to get everyone's attention. So maybe it was coincidental. I don't think it was completely coincidental after those two games. I think they said, "All right, Sid's got his record. We're not happy with some of the veterans that we're seeing right now. Let's bring the young guys up now."
I think that is a great point, Josh. I think let's make sure 87 has his point of game before we start messing with the top lines.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, that's
1,000% okay.
Not that he wouldn't have done it anyway, but yeah, I mean that was a pretty darn relevant thing, and a pretty extraordinary thing that he did. And the Penguins have known for a while that realistically they're not making the playoffs. So when it gets to that point, it's like, yeah, Sid's allowed to play for himself a little bit and try to get some points. Not that he ever, shortchanges the game or his teammates. He certainly doesn't. In fact, I mentioned the locker room scene in Buffalo after he set the record, and he was speaking in such of a somber tone. It wasn't a fun occasion for him. And he even said, he quoted Herm Edwards. He said, you play to win the game. And that was clearly on his mind. You lose 7-3 to the Buffalo Sabres. That's a kick to the teeth. That really hurts, and I know that bothered him. I felt bad for him on some level to set a record really of that impressive, that magnitude. To do it against Buffalo when there's like 6,000 empty seats in that building and a terrible atmosphere. It felt like a preseason game that night, and he's out there making hockey history. There is something a little sad about that in the big picture.
Well, what's interesting about that Buffalo game was I thought for sure that, hey, we might have given up 8 goals, but we would score 7. I thought for sure that the Penguins are going to show up and play that night because I penciled in a loss against Tampa. Like we played great in Florida. We were worn out. We have a day off, and Tampa comes in pissed. They were embarrassed.
Yeah.
On
and that
West
team's
Coast.
Really good. So,
yeah. And Vasilevsky is quietly kind of Vasilevsky again.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. No, he is. And no, you could feel that one coming a mile away.
Yeah.
No question.
But I thought for sure they would ramp it up in Buffalo. And, I guess Buffalo's scoring some goals now, but.
No, they are. You know what was interesting about yesterday's game also? I would have bet money that Tristan Jarry wasn't going to get the start yesterday. He literally had been yanked 2 games in a row for giving up like 4 goals in the first period or whatever it was in both games. Like, how often does that happen where a guy is that bad 2 games in a row and then you give him another start? I don't know if Sully was on board with tanking after all these games or what, but like, you're really giving him another start. And then in Jarry fashion, he pitches a 31 save shutout because right when you think you have him figured out, you don't. It has to be the strangest season we've ever seen from a goaltender because he's been legitimately good in almost every game since being recalled. But the game, especially in Buffalo, I mean, he was so bad, and the Tampa game wasn't much better. It's impossible to get a read on this guy.
It really is. I just think that Sully trusts Ned even less.
Maybe.
I do. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ned is, I like him as a person. I don't have the disdain that I had for our other backup goaltender seasons past. But at some point, Ned, you got to play a little better. I understand that no backup goalie is Dominic Hasek, but he's had some horrible, horrible games. And, it's.
I feel bad for him because it looks like he knows it too. Like you can see he feels it. Like,
he cares. I mean, he cares a lot. And no, it's interesting. He's had a really bad year. We talk so much about Jarry. And yeah, Jarry has a higher ceiling than Ned, so I think on some level his play is more disappointing. But he's not been any worse than Ned this year. And Ned's not been good. And Blomqvist wasn't as good as people thought he. I mean, yeah, he had a couple of nice games at first, but he was really bad in his last 5 or 6 outings. So it's been a team effort to the goaltending department, no question.
What are the odds too that we had back-to-back years with goalies scoring a goal? And I was sitting there thinking about that during the game. I'm looking at Ned and Jarry, and I'm like, what are the odds that it was these 2 guys? Like, we had Tom Barrasso and Fleury.
Fleury always tried at least, yeah.
It's just.
Are we gonna? We have some more Penguin talk because I have a bunch of national notes. Okay. Just as I was about to buy my Boko Imama sweater. Horrible news. And the only thing that gives me solace is I can't believe he's a healthy scratch. I'm glad he's injured. I didn't want him injured for 4 to 6 months, though. A bicep tear. What was he crawling like 400 pounds? Josh, how did he injure his bicep?
I don't know. I'm honestly not sure. I just hope they bring him back next year because I really like this guy. He's a very pleasant man, and he goes after the Flyers when he's given the opportunity. What else would a Penguin fan want in a 4th liner?
I know. He built the statue.
Yeah, no, he's great. I listen, and like we've said on the show many times, he's not a great hockey player, but he's not so terrible that he hurts you out there. I'd rather have him out there than Matt Nieto or some of the other guys that we've seen on the bottom 6 this year. So I agree. I hope he comes back. I mean that sincerely.
I mean it sincerely too, but honestly, we can name guys not named Matt Nieto because that's really just an insult. I mean, he's better than a few other guys, that I could see him out there. Like, I'll tell you one guy we've talked about, or not talked about, what you were saying, guys. Dan Heinen plays an honest game. He hasn't phoned in paychecks this year. I think Dayton Heinen hustles.
Yeah,
How about Nola Chari too?
Achari plays hard. I mean, he's just so slow that against some teams.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. They both play hard. But you ask me who I'd rather have on the team on the fourth line next year. I'd rather have Imama.
No, I know, and you mentioned Hayes, who has been really bad for a while now. His lack of foot speed is a major problem. He had a little run there after the new year when he was back in the lineup. He scored a few times. But he's clearly on the downside of his career, and he's under contract for one more season. I don't see how he helps the Penguins in any way next season, to be honest with you.
I hope he enjoys Arby's in Wilkes-Barre, because there's no way he should be a Pittsburgh Penguin next year. There's no way they can't find. I don't care what he's making next year. There's no way they can't find 12 guys better than they're all sitting down there in Wilkes-Barre right now. There's 12 guys better than him. If anything, scratch him like you did. But I mean, how many times I'm sure Sully listened to me either here or on DVE, just begging for him not to be on the power play. Of course, Gino gets on and scores, and then Gino gets hurt. But I just think that he wouldn't bury him on the fourth line, whatever, because he's slow. And I guess, Imama can be slow and then find someone else that can't score, but at least maybe fight and have a fourth line. But to put him in any position where he's holding back any kids or he's on the power play, please, Sully, I've gone to the Batches with you on many occasions, but I'm not with you on that one.
I agree with you, Joe. And, let's remember this also. Hayes is in Pittsburgh because the Blues gave the Penguins a second-round pick to take him. I mean, it was all about getting that second-round pick, and Kyle knew full well, probably not going to be very good the next year or two, so we'll deal with having him on the team. Maybe he'll play better than we think, and we got that second-round pick, so which they ultimately use in a trade, but they still have the equivalent of another second-round pick for him, so that was why they got him. People keep saying, why did they get Kevin Hayes? Well, that's why they got Kevin Hayes. There's not really any other reason. But no, I agree with you. And especially like we are starting to see, there is real talent in Wilkes-Barre. And by the way, the Penguins, I don't know how aggressive they're going to be this summer. I don't think they'll be super aggressive in free agency, Joe. They've got a lot of money to spend. Like they can make a couple of additions that would, if nothing less, certainly enhance their bottom six. So guys like Hayes and Achari, I don't know, even though they're under contract next year, whether they're still in the organization or not, I don't know that they need to be playing. In fact, I don't think they do.
The great thing about Mr. Dubas having like 90 draft picks in the first 5 rounds is he can throw 3 draft picks just to get rid of Hayes and Achari to somebody.
Maybe you'll see that.
Yeah, hopefully I do. I want to make a point. I want to make a point about a guy that, I guess a few points. One is you gotta love Connor Dewars. That guy's playing hard. What a pickup! I still think Toronto needs him, but I think it's great for a 5th-round pick. But the real prize in this, Timmins, I think, looks like a real NHL defenseman. I think he could be a Penguin for a while now.
I like them both. Dewar is a guy, if I may use a Sully expression, he's always playing on the right side of the puck. Like he knows how to be a bottom 6 player, even though they've had him on the second line some games because of the injuries. He's not a top 6 guy, but as a bottom 6 guy, he scored, I think, 9 goals in Minnesota last year, like 58 games or something. So he's got a little bit of scoring touch, but he's really good defensively. Just plays a smart game. Like there's a professionalism to his game that the Penguins badly need. Like in terms of situational hockey, just, getting pucks deep when you're up 2-1 in the third period instead of doing something stupid, taking hits to make plays, little stuff like that they don't do well enough. He does those things. I think he's a welcome addition. And Timmins, I said it before and I'll say it again. If he's on your third pairing, like that's good. Like that's a significant upgrade over the likes of P.O. Joseph or whoever else they've been throwing out there. Like I really like this guy. I always have. He moves the puck nicely. He can skate. You'd like to see him play a little more physical than he does given his size, but it's okay. It's not a problem. Like I really like him. These guys are both RFAs this summer. I would assume they both will be in Pittsburgh next year. I think Dubas made a really smart decision to bring them in just in the final seconds before the deadline.
I don't think that Timmins shies away from the contact, though. And I think
he doesn't.
He's just not overly physical.
Right. That's fair.
I think he's right there. I am as great as Dubas did at the deadline, getting those 2 guys. I still don't know why Desharnais isn't on our blue line because all the problems we've been having clearing the net. He wasn't Scott Stevens, but he was the closest thing we had to even someone trying to be Scott Stevens.
Well,
and now with Boko gone, we have nobody that's going to really defend anybody if it gets nasty.
No, that's fair. I just don't think they viewed him as part of their future, so they did what they did. But I would certainly like to see more physicality in general, and I think Dubas has identified that as a problem. It's been a problem for this team for almost a decade now. I have always said that the single biggest difference between the Penguins of 16 and 17 and of the Penguins in like 20 and 21, they just weren't hard to play against anymore. Where 16 and 17, you had guys like Kunitz, Hornquist, Hainsey, Cole, even Cullen, Benino. These were tough hockey players, guys who took hits to make plays, guys who would slash you when the ref wasn't looking. Like they made it miserable to play against the Penguins, and they just lost all of those guys almost all at once. And they've never really had that back, and that's a real problem. Watch the best teams in the league. Watch how nasty and abrasive they are to play against. The Penguins do not have that right now.
It was a real crime how really Kunitz went away for nothing.
Yeah, it was. He should have retired a Penguin. He's one of those guys. I know he played for other teams or for the Ducks before the Penguins, but he was a loyal soldier for a long time, and a lot like Rusty in that even if he wasn't good enough to play in the top 6 anymore, which maybe we'll see with Rusty in 3 years, he could play in a bottom 6 role, Kunitz, and still be so effective as he was against Ottawa, and when he was playing on the 4th line. And he scored, 2 goals in Game 7. I mean, I could see Rusty taking a very similar trajectory when he gets into his mid to late 30s. But no, you are right about Kunitz. And guys like that, you win championships with guys like that. You really do. And they just lost too many all at once. Kunitz, like all those guys I mentioned, and there are others. Like those were tough guys to play against. You can't lose that many all at once.
He was just a sole member of those teams, and to have him go, and that's why there's no three-peat.
No.
I mean, him and I. This is gonna sound like I'm bagging on Chris Letang, but if Chris Letang is not playing in 2018's playoffs and Chris Kunitz is, I'm pretty sure. I think we'd be. I would give us at least the Game 7. We'd get to Game 7 against the Capitals.
Speaking of Chris, boy, is he struggling right now. He is really not good right now. I don't know if it's father time. I don't know if he's a little disengaged because the team's not going to make the playoffs. I don't know what it is. Boy, he is brutal to watch right now. He has been one of their worst defensemen the last 7 or 8 games.
Yeah, he is. His shift, a couple shifts with Grzelcyk, who is manning the power play, and Grzelcyk's played pretty good, but they've been on the ice for some just horrible, not even goal, like efforts. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. No, it's clearly a problem.
Chris has he made a turnover yesterday where you're like, you could see, we've talked about it before, but the speed just isn't there anymore. And he made a play where he was like, if I screw this up, I can get back and take the puck away. And he got he was like step for step with the guy. But like back in the day, he used to be able to get back and defend and, take the puck. And it's just like, I don't know if he's not, people are going to slow down, but maybe he's got to adapt his game a little bit.
He does not pull away from people. When he does that thing when he skates around his own net, like when he would just pull away from people, he doesn't do it anymore. I think it's just hard for him to change the way he's always played. Some guys can do it, some can't. And I definitely think he's having trouble adapting to the wheels not being what they once were.
His wheels are definitely coming off because he's not playing defense effectively. And I'm not saying it's an effort issue. But when he's out of position, not even getting back, but if he's out of position in the corner now, he can't get to the front of the net anymore.
You're right. No,
and it's causing a lot of problems for Jari and Ned.
And in Sullivan's defense, who else are you going to put out there? You want Erik Karlsson out defending in front of the net? Not really. Like, who else is there? So it's just, the goaltending has been the biggest problem all season, but the blue line is right behind there. I mean, they certainly have had their issues, and almost to a man, quite frankly.
Now, Brunicki, I heard someone call him Brunick, but I've been calling him Brunicki. I don't know what's proper.
I think it's Brunick, but Brunicki sounds cool.
I love Brunicki. Sounds great.
I'm always on the side of cool. Now he's at AHL right now. Can he come up for a look, or is that like against the rules of juniors to pros?
He won't. I don't. We're not going to see him this year. They just want to get him a taste of life in the American Hockey League, and they're going to have him up for the playoffs. It's interesting, Joe, that it's been made very clear to me that Kyle Dubas and the whole Penguin staff, they are valuing making an AHL run with this group of guys, learning how to win together with Miroshov in net and with McGroarty and Koivunen going back down there when the Penguin season ends in time for the AHL playoffs, and Brunick there and all the other young talent, that they really want those kids to make a run and kind of learn how to win together and bond together, if you will. And they wanted Brunick to be part of that. The real question is, does he make the Penguins roster out of training camp next season? Ordinarily, I would say a 19-year-old defenseman, he'll be 19 at that point, second-round pick, probably not quite. But given what I saw in training camp last year and in the exhibition season, if he's going to play at that level or keep getting better, I think there's a real chance he makes the team. I just think he's that good. He clearly should have been a first-round pick. As
me and Corey were watching on the internet all this fall, he was easily the Penguins' best defenseman in camp.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't even close.
No,
I know. He's
so amazing. His first period too. Remember, we talked about it after his first preseason game. It was like one of the worst first periods.
That was bad.
Oh God, and then they got it together. Like, I mean, I remember seeing a young Brooks Orpik have a period like that. So like, I don't hold that against somebody.
It happens, but he got it together in a hurry, and he's one of those guys. Like, I would just watch him for 5 minutes in practice. Like, whoa. Like this guy looks a little different than all the other defensemen on the ice. This kid's really impressive. I know he's had some injury problems this season, but he's healthy now. And I don't know what the plan is for Pittsburgh Sportsnet. I hope they televise some of the Wilkes-Barre playoff games. I bet people in Pittsburgh would absolutely love to watch that.
Yeah,
and I hope they will. I know people would be really into watching that.
I was just going to recommend if they don't, you can Flow TV is where you can stream all the AHL games, so you actually get the whole package. So, but I would imagine they will, because
yeah, why not? I mean, I'm sure they can sell some advertising for that and make it worth everybody's while, because I remember back in 2003, we were all watching the Wilkes-Barre games with Marc-Andre Fleury and Brooks Orpik and all the other, Max Talbot. That's an exciting thing for fans. That's what you have to look forward to right now. So yeah, I'm certainly hoping they do that. I might even make the trek out to Wilkes-Barre. Always a fun drive to the Northeast. It might be worth it to see them play.
On the Brunick watch, though, for next year, after the Four Nations especially, I think Chris Letang there has to be a conversation. And if he can go in a package or be sweetened, I think his days here, he's not the same. If someone wants him as a leader, and a 5-6 role, but everyone knows he can't run a power play. He's seen it for 20 years. But maybe a young team that could, maybe San Jose, maybe the Duckies. I don't know, but
my question is, who would want him?
The problem is with him, you still have 3 years left on his contract. $6.1 million. That he's not a $6 million player anymore, and I think everybody knows it. We talk about the bad contracts on this team with Jari and Graves and Carlson, and they are bad contracts. Well, Letang's is bad too. At the time, $6.1 million a year didn't seem that offensive, but the fact that Hextall gave him a 6-year deal when he was 35 years old, that was insane. It didn't make sense then. It still doesn't make sense. I know Chris is a conditioning freak, but we can see it. Physically, he's not the same. So I think his contract becomes a real problem. I don't know if he'd want to go. I suspect there are some teams he might consider it. But yeah, it's an issue right now, the way he's playing.
That may be the worst contract of all.
Yeah, that's really
good.
Like when you put it into perspective.
Yeah, I mean,
Angle is 41.
I mean, he's got a hell of a resume. I appreciate everything he's done for the Penguins, no question. And I'd rather him be around young players than Carlson, just in terms of work habits and things of that nature, for what that's worth. But If you think Graves and Jari are the only guys with bad contracts on this team, you would be wrong. There are certainly a couple of others.
Yeah, that is for sure. Now that's a great point there, Sarah. When is Pickering coming up? Because I did notice he's on the third pairing in Wilkes-Barre, which I was shocked.
I'm a little surprised that we have not seen him, Sarah. I didn't think he was bad when he had his first NHL stint at the midway point of the season. He had a couple of games where maybe he wasn't great before they sent him back down. He wasn't bad. And when they sent him back to Wilkes-Barre, my sense was that we would see him again this season. And I know that he works his butt off, that they like him on a personal level a lot. They were not disappointed with how he played, but I haven't heard that he's on his way up. With only 7 games left, he very well may not be. I still think he's a good candidate to be on the team next season. But I would also temper expectations for him a little bit. I know he's a first-round pick, and that gets people excited. I don't know how high his ceiling is. He might be kind of a nice third pairing defenseman, which is okay. That you're not going to be upset by that. For a first-round pick, you might want more than that. He's not the greatest skater in the world. That might end up hurting him a little bit at the NHL level, but I have not heard that he's on his way up, so we will see.
Yeah, I thought he played very well, but his last 2 games were
bad,
very subpar.
Yes.
Now, when you look at every defenseman on the Penguins, every single one of them, Grzelcyk, Graves, Carlson, Letang.
I could write a book about the game Graves played in Tampa. It was so bad. It was unbelievable.
P.O. Joseph. I mean, like they weren't just as they weren't any worse than any of these guys' worst games.
You take a sigh of relief when Ryan Shea's on the ice right now. He's your most reliable defenseman. Like he is. He's actually okay. He's like a latter day Chad Ruedel, which I don't mean as an insult. Like he's going to have an okay NHL career, I think.
Well, if we get Chad Ruedel, but any chance we could get him back on the roster?
Josh, when he was waived, I couldn't believe we didn't get him back.
I know. They could use the guy. God Almighty, I know he's getting old, but this blue line is in shambles right now. I mean, it's not pretty.
Isn't that really the problem with the Penguins in the future, but this summer, that really the big, we have some young kids coming up to reinforce the forwards. Maybe you can spend a little more money on a better bottom 6 guy, but it's not going to break the bank. But where you would really want to break the bank is on a number 1 defenseman, a top physical, like a Parayko or like what on that level, or a really great goaltender. And the problem is our money is already spent in those spots, our big money spots. Or would you still go big and just have 3 defensemen worth $30 million?
Well, there's a lot of different things you can do because they will have money to spend. It's funny, this summer we talk about who they might bring in. We talk about all these draft picks. What do they do with these picks? Do they use, they package some picks to trade way up in the draft? Do they use some of these picks to acquire NHL talent? There's a lot of stuff they can do. And yet the biggest thing of all this summer still might be how many bad contracts can Kyle Dubas rid himself of? And it's easier said than done. The cap going up around the league helps him. Maybe a team will take a chance on Tristan Jarry. Probably not, but it only takes one. You never know. Carlson's the one to me. I've had people around the league tell me, like, if he retains a little bit of his salary, like somebody will take him. People still evaluate him on a pretty high plane. And I would do that in a heartbeat if I were the Penguins. We've talked about it enough. It just hasn't worked here with Erik Karlsson. If you can clear that money off the books, I think that would be a very wise move for the Penguins. But the fact is there's about 5 or 6 guys they'd like to get rid of. And that's just not going to happen in one summer. It's just not that easy.
Yeah. And I feel like if Jari would have, not had those 2 implosions last week, the chances of him, but like, I felt like that no matter what he does from here on out, those 2 games kind of like everybody's like, oh yeah, yep, you're still him. And I noticed this is a really random observation. But at the game, sitting there going, you know what? If you have an in-house band, and this is nothing against the artists that are doing the work, because they play great music and everything, but if you are at a Penguin game and there is an in-house band, that is not a good sign for your playoff hopes. because the only in-house bands I can remember was the one that was there yesterday. They've had a couple over the last couple of years, but do you remember the Blue Line Band in the early 2000s?
I do.
And nothing against the musicians, but I remember even at that age sitting there going like in 2003, like, oh boy, like this isn't mean good things for the product on the ice, does it?
Was it like a Jimmy Buffett tribute band yesterday during the intermission?
Yeah,
it was something.
I get it. They're trying to get the crowd into it and everything. But like I said, I mean, I have nothing against the artist. I just was literally thinking to myself, like, man, when you're in like the Stanley Cup chase, there's not an in-house band and like all the all the little extra, this and that's that come along. But yeah. But anyways, we'll get into some NHL stuff. But first, Mr. Bill Neofis. I hope he was there yesterday. I don't know if he went to the game.
Bill, he wasn't. I have to assume our great sponsor will be in attendance on April 17th if Ovi has a chance to break the record, because our sponsor does not like the Capitals, but he really hates Gretzky. So I want to see, what his mood is like that day and what he's pulling for. But there's no question, I think he'll be in the building that day. And for everyone listening, Bill Neofis, our sponsor, Neofis Insurance, the Kings of Pittsburgh Insurance. They don't call themselves that. That's what I call them. They're not that arrogant, but we all know it's the truth. They're the best. And Bill, with a reminder, I didn't know this. This is fitting because I once got a ticket for driving while texting years ago. So I should heed this advice. My birthday's in April. In April, I did not know this, is Distracted Driving Awareness Month. So the Neofis Insurance Group wanted to share a quick reminder. Staying focused behind the wheel doesn't just keep you safe, it can also save you money. Did you know that distracted driving is one of the leading causes of accidents nationwide? Does not surprise me at all that that's the case, by the way. Talking on the phone can reduce the brain activity by 37%. And sending a quick text can take your eyes off the road for 5 seconds at a time. We've all done it, and it's stupid, and we shouldn't do it. So a good message from Bill and the good people at Neofis Insurance Group. Give them a call, whatever kind of insurance you need. You name it, any kind of insurance you can think of, they will take care of you. They take care of me. They're the best. It's 412-364-3388. Give them a call.
Thank you, Bill. And you say reading a text message reduces your brain activity by 37%. So our defense must be reading their text messages all game long.
Well, and Joe, because I like to mention this once, just looking at the Pirates box score can reduce your brain cells by 80% because your Bucks are already 1-4.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is, I the only media I have on my iPhone is The Athletic and the New York Post, which is a comedian. The New York Post is the best. But now their sports section is a pay-per section. So I only pay for Josh Yowie, Rob Rossi, and the guys at The Athletic. They do a great, even if you're not a Penguin fan, if you're a National Hockey League fan, it's the best hockey coverage there is. That being said, one of the big headlines on the front of I didn't know what happened, but I laughed and laughed and laughed at the Thunderbird Cafe with Randy and a few of his friends. It said, "Pirate outfield, Pirate broke leg rounding first base after home run."
Yeah, it only could happen to the Pirates.
I mean, what?
They have a way about them. They really do.
I mean, I just like, the guy at the gym. I didn't say this, but it's like, I don't know. When I hear people talk about the Pirates, to me, it's like people that talk about wrestling and they act like it's real. Like, you like baseball and you want to go and enjoy the games. I'm all for everyone having whatever they want to have as a good time. Enjoy yourself. But to sit here and to dissect the Pirates, like it's like dissecting the Washington Generals. Like they're not trying to win.
That is what it's like. Yeah, no. You're not wrong, Joe. I mean, you're really not.
Observation. So I want to get into a couple of the NHL, big picture stuff in the NHL. But first of all, this is outside of what's currently going on. Have you guys seen what is going on with Gavin McKenna? Because I think, first of all, playoff races, the Rangers are right there, but the East is so bad that the Rangers are on the verge of a wild card spot. but also might, if they miss the playoffs, they're going to protect their first round pick, and we get next year's first round pick. So I don't. But anyways, Gavin McKenna had like something like 28 points over the last 5 games of the season. He had the most points in the CHL from anybody other than the Sidney Crosby in his minus 1 year from the draft.
His age 17 season, basically.
Yeah, 17 season. So, but in his playoffs, 2 playoff games, 9 points in 2 playoff games.
Well,
this is out of control.
Yeah, for those who don't know who Gavin McKenna is, just do yourself a favor, go to YouTube and click in his name and enjoy the highlights. He will be the number 1 overall pick in the draft in the summer of 26. He is the best prospect since Connor McDavid, no question about it. It's his passing, but he's a playmaking center. I compare him to whoever you want to, McDavid or Crosby. He's built like Gretzky. That's who he looks like to me a little bit on the ice, quite honestly. He plays that kind of game. He looks like the real deal. I hear people talking about tanking this season. Like, there's no guy worth tanking for in this draft. There's some good players in this draft. Next year is going to be a little more interesting. That's the kind of kid teams are going to want to tank for. And if the Penguins can find a way to get at least 2 first-round picks in the draft next year, you're enhancing your chances of getting him, even if it's by a little bit. It might be worth it.
Yeah, I would. I don't know if the Rangers could tank, but good Lord, whatever it takes, if you could get that kid on our team.
They're not very good, so you never know. They're one Shesterkin injury away from being a pretty bad team right now, I would say, Joe.
Tanking, though, in a lottery league is really a fool's errand. That's the Buffalo Sabres.
That's the problem.
I mean, they had Big Jesus sweaters printed up, and they came in second place.
That's right.
And that's a good jumping point to our national hour, or national half hour, and national 20 minutes, is Jack Eichel is kind of not sneakily, but I definitely a top 5 MVP candidate in my mind. He is playing incredible hockey for the Knights.
He should be on everybody's short list. He's almost at 100 points now. He just keeps getting better every year. And he's always been a really good player, but going to Vegas was clearly the best thing that ever happened to his career. And that team's under the radar right now. I would not discount them as a real problem for other teams in the West. I wouldn't want to have to beat that team 4 out of 7 games, and he's a big reason why. He has truly become a great hockey player, Joe.
Oh, 1,000%. It's almost like, I'm sorry if my great friend Brenton Biddlecombe has to hear this. It's almost like he just had to get out of Buffalo. Almost like being surrounded by mediocre talent was not his. It's almost like he was playing one of the AHL guys. You're like, well, he'll be good when he gets the NHL when he's playing with more talent. It's almost like, because I thought he had a selfish game in Buffalo, but he spreads the wealth, in Vegas. Like he's an excellent passer.
Oh no, he can do anything. He absolutely can. And I would think anybody would want to get out of Buffalo. Just being there the other day for the Penguins game, that's the most dismal atmosphere I've experienced in an NHL game in years. And that's a great hockey town. It really is. They always support the Sabres. Finally, I think, especially this season, this is the first time I've sensed when they're like, the people there have had enough. They're sick of the Pagolas. They're sick of the mediocrity or less than mediocrity every season. Tanking isn't always all it's cracked up to be. You got to be careful with that.
No, and I'll tell you the other thing about Buffalo is, they always, and Pittsburgh's up there too, not usually all the time, but Buffalo is always number 1 in out of market games.
Oh yeah.
If it's the, New Jersey Devils versus Detroit on national TV, Buffalo will have the highest rating of any city. It's a great hockey market. Yeah, I think Vegas is going to be in the Pacific. Obviously, they're going to be the number 1 seed on the Pacific Division, and Oilers and Kings are going to kill each other, and they're going to be a tough team to get through. I'm liking what I see from my mistress. Byfield's playing some incredible hockey, and I kind of was getting on Kuzmenko, but he's starting to find some rhythm up there with Kempe, who we always say is a most underrated guy in the league.
Yeah, I can't wait for the Western playoffs. In particular, we've known for quite some time that it looks like Dallas and Colorado will play in the first round. I don't like how Dallas is playing right now, so I don't know if they just missed Heiskanen that much or what the problem is. They don't they're not operating at the level I feel like they should be given the talent that they have.
Well, the last 2 or 3 games, they're playing a lot better.
A little better, yeah.
Miko's filling in a little bit more. Hens was just number 2 star of the week, so he's kind of revving it up. And I heard positive steps with Heiskanen that maybe he can come back in time for some of the first series,
which would be massive, no question. But that series alone, just on paper, it doesn't get much better than that. And I really think your mistress team, the Kings, they can give the Oilers a series. The Oilers are not as good this year.
No,
they're a 2-man team, and they're great 2 men. They are. But, McDavid has been banged up, and McDavid hasn't – listen, he's the best player in the world. I'm not here to take any shots at Connor McDavid. He hasn't been as dominant as usual this season. I don't know if he's dealing with an injury or if he's dealing with a hangover from coming so close to winning the cup and not winning it, or whatever the case may be. Maybe he's just not surrounded with quite the same talent that he was last season. But I don't think they're the favorite in the West by any stretch, and I think LA can beat them. I really do. I think it'd be a great series.
Yeah, I think Leon's their team MVP.
Leon might be the NHL MVP. Yeah. I think he's number 1 right now in the Vegas books. But obviously, they Fogle, Holloway, and the kid in Buffalo, who were replaced by an older Arvidsson and a light in the loafers Skinner. So they really blew that team up in the wrong way. But I'll say this about them: if Kane comes back in any format, that will be huge for the Oilers.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if he is. But I really like the way the Kings are playing right now. They brought this kid up, Mallet. Now he was throwing haymakers on Carlo. I really like the way the Kings are made up. And Kuzmenko because before they really kind of they had to load up Byfield. Byfield gets his own line.
Well, he's been great.
He's got like 12. He's got like 9 goals in 11 games or something crazy, and a bunch of assists. When he was drafted number 2, I was like, this is going to be the man. He just can't get. Kopitar's had 2 bad games. Not bad games, but not great. Other than that, they just can't move Kopitar. Kopitar's just been too good this whole season.
Yeah.
Or Byfield would be the number 1 center.
Well, the Kings are built to win in the playoffs, so they're a nasty team to play against. I really look forward to a lot of these series that we're probably going to see. Those are the 2 in the West that jump out, and I certainly hope in the East. I've been saying this for a while. I would love to see the Battle of Florida in the first round. It's a shame that they would have to play in the first round. They might be the 2 best teams in the East. I think it would be just an unbelievable series, Joe. I mean, they would just beat the hell out of each other.
They would. And I kind of want to see one of those teams not have to. I'd like to see that in the second round.
I would too.
I'd like to see Toronto go down there and see what Toronto can do. I don't want to see Toronto, Ottawa, because I don't want. I don't want
the Battle of Ontario.
I don't want the Canadian media to have that much joy.
I always look at it this way: you're killing 2 birds. You're taking 1 out, guaranteed.
Joe wants all the Canadian teams out in the first round, is what he's saying.
No, I wouldn't. No, I don't. I want to see. I just want to see Ottawa get curb stomped by somebody, and then there's no taxes in Florida. No, well, they'll get them next year. I want to see Barkov or Braden Point just curb stomp them, and I want to see Brady Tkachuk want out of Ottawa. I just want to see Ottawa banished. I really do.
I've always loved Joe's hatred for Ottawa. It's just kind of random, but I like it. It's fine. That could happen. Who knows? It's interesting.
Josh, remember, Claude Giroux is an Ottawa Senator, so it's not out of nowhere.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
There's always a through line of the Flyers somewhere in Joe's hatred.
It's like the Kevin Bacon thing. Yeah. That division's fascinating because Toronto, Florida, Tampa, any of those 3 teams can win the division. And it is a big deal to win the division. If you win the division, you probably get Ottawa in the first round. If you don't win the division, if you got to play Tampa or Florida, probably. That's if you're Toronto, do you really trust Toronto to go through both Florida teams? Like, hell no.
They're not.
Now, would they beat Ottawa in the first round? Yeah, probably. And then all of a sudden you get to play Tampa or Florida after they've beaten each other up. So that's a really huge deal for Toronto. And I assure you, with Florida and Tampa, all the cup winners in those locker rooms, they don't give a shit if they win the division. They know that's not what really matters. But for Toronto, It's a really big deal. So I'm very interested to see how the Leafs fail again and in springtime. You know they will. I just don't think they're that good, quite honestly. But they would be doing themselves a favor by at least winning the division.
I will say this though, it's almost as if if they don't win the division, if they don't come in first, they better come in third. Because I would not want home ice advantage game one when Tampa Bay comes to town with Vasilevsky and that Hedman on the blue line and the top line of Cooch, Point, and Snake. Because they'll be down 3-0, and the buttholes are going to get so squeaky tight. And they might not even come back to Toronto for game 5 when that happens.
If you lose game 1 in that situation, you're definitely losing game 2.
I don't know what my picks are yet for the playoffs, but I would not be surprised if I end up picking Tampa to come out of the East. I think that team's really good. And Joe, you mentioned it earlier, Vasilevsky, kind of quietly under the radar. He's Vasilevsky again. He wasn't himself last year. He had that injury. He never really looked right. He's been outstanding. And if he's going to play like that, they're going to score goals. Like with all the talent they have. That's a scary hockey team. I'm telling you, they could beat any team in a best-of-7 series.
1,000%. And Mr. Kachuk is skating in Sunrise, which is very pleasant. Him and the Rat. Oh, it's gonna be fun. But I like the Toronto Maple Leafs because I love the great American hero Austin Matthews. I love Mr. Nyes. Nyes is a big shoulders, good hands. He's a man. I love Matthew. Oh my God. I wish he was a Penguin. I love Matthew. And I love Johnny T. And they ripped that C off him. Johnny T is on fire right now. He's great. He's almost carrying that team. So I'm a big, I like Toronto. I basically only hate the Flyers, but I love watching Toronto play hockey.
Oh, so do I. And if you removed all the baggage and all the history, and if you just looked at them on paper, you'd say, yeah, they could come out of the East. And you just kind of assume that they can't because, years of evidence suggest that something will go wrong in the playoffs. They're like the Cubs or the Red Sox a generation ago. It's just the way it is with them. But it's not like they don't have talent. And if ever there was a year for them to come out of the East isn't that great. But the problem is the Atlantic Division is still really good. And those are the teams that's their problem. If you play in the Metro, anybody could come out of that. Nothing against the Capitals. They've been a great story, but they get to play a lot of games against the Metro. Don't think that hasn't helped them a little bit.
Cool. Speaking of the Metro, I'm sure you guys were aware of the ultimate class act the grade 8 was in calling his whole team back on the ice to shake hands with Fleury. I thought that was a magnificent performance.
And I think that the good part about that, I mean, I know they eventually won, but Fleury wasn't there. Like Fleury always got the better of Ovechkin.
Well, except when he gave Ovechkin his Stanley Cup.
Well, but I mean, yeah.
No, it's weird. Fleury got the better of him.
But I mean,
in the big moments,
really good in the finals.
In the big moments, Fleury. It's not like Ovechkin never scored against him. He scored like 8 times against him in the 2009 playoffs. But what do we remember? The breakaway in Game 7. And the knob of the stick save when Flower jerked off a stick after he stopped him in Game 7 in 2017, right? Which I did confirm with Flower afterwards. That's exactly what he was doing in his post-save celebration. But no, those two have had quite a storied history with one another. And I give Ovechkin so much credit. That was really cool that he did that. It just shows you the respect people have for Flower.
Yeah, and also, how do you hate Ovechkin at this point? As a Penguins fan, I mean, I just neophis that.
I love Ovechkin. I will say this though: the other one that people bring up, I think Elliot brought it up, or his partner on this week's podcast. How about the save he made? Is that the one you're talking about? The one when Ovechkin came down on the breakaway. That's the save, right?
In games, well, that was 2009 when he stopped him on the breakaway.
Yes,
in Game 7. Yeah.
Yes,
that's the glove.
Who knows the fate of nations?
Oh. That's exactly what I wrote I wrote a little thing about Fleury, and that's what I said. I said that save could have literally meant that Ovechkin wins 3 cups before Crosby.
Who knows? No,
you don't know.
You don't know when you give up a goal in the first 5 minutes of a game like that, of a Game 7. History says you're not going to win that game. Who knows how that affected things? But yeah, full credit to Ovi for how he handled that. And yeah, I will say, listen, he's what, 5 goals away from breaking the record. Like, there's a real chance it could happen in Pittsburgh in the last game of the regular season. Maybe he'll break it before then. But if he breaks it in Pittsburgh, I actually think Penguins fans will be extremely respectful. They're great hockey fans, and I don't feel like the rivalry is like 10 years ago. Everyone, Crosby was hated in DC and Ovi was hated in Pittsburgh. It's not really like that as much anymore. There's more of a, we've seen that with the Steelers and Ravens over the years too. There's, after a while, there's this begrudging respect, almost like both fan bases say, you know what, like, this has been great. Like, let's just enjoy this a little bit. So and there's going to be a ton of Capitals fans there too. I know they're buying up many of the tickets, as they should be. But I think Penguins fans will really be respectful, and I would hope they would, because that's history that you're watching. And one thing that helps Ovi in this case, Wayne Gretzky's never been Mr. Popularity in Pittsburgh, so a lot of people probably want to see him lose his record.
Oh yeah,
I was one of the very first, avid #1 Penguin fans that was always on Ovi's side in these situations. I always say, give him his due. Jealousy's not a good look. I love the way he plays. I love Ovechkin. I started rooting for him 4 years ago to catch Gretzky. I don't want him to do it in Pittsburgh. I know I would be the first one to stand and cheer, give him the ovation he deserves for breaking that record. But don't do it against the Penguins. I don't want him to do it against the Penguins. I know how you guys feel.
I suspect he'll do it before then. He still has 10 games. I don't know exactly, 8 or 9, 10 games. I'm not sure how many they have left. Usually great players like that, they just have a way of, chasing down the records, and they like to do it at home. I wouldn't be shocked if he does it in his last home game. And you know what? The super genius, our friend Mark Madden, had a great point the other day in the press box. And he said, the best thing for the league is if he ends up 1 goal short and they get to promote the hell out of it all summer. And I said, you're absolutely right. The problem is they'll have the Capitals start like next season in New Jersey on a Monday night or something, because that's the way the NHL works.
Yeah.
That would be best case scenario, and they would not do it. They would not have Sid versus Ovi on the opening night. And
just like Sid's first ever game. Let's send him to New Jersey. That makes a lot of sense.
And put it on the OLN network.
Right.
Oh, and I'm sure there'd be like a WNBA semifinal game on that night. It'll be on like ESPN2.
You might be right. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting, but yeah, it is a huge storyline. No matter how it goes down, it will be interesting. But no, hats off to Ovi for the way he handled that. And real quick, while we're still in this, talking about different teams around the league, our friend Torts is gone. And
yes,
the worst nightmare. The worst nightmare could be coming to fruition, because the Flyers want Rick Tocchet. There's no doubt in my mind they want Rick Tocchet. Keith Jones wants Rick Tocchet. Danny Briere wants Rick Tocchet. And for those who don't know, Tocchet's contract expires at the end of this season. It's been a nightmare of a year in Vancouver. It looks like they might not make the playoffs. There's been the JT Miller-Pettersson drama. I know Jim Rutherford wants to keep him in Vancouver. I know this for a fact. But that doesn't mean Toc wants that. I don't know what Toc wants, but I know he loves Philly. He's a beloved guy there, a former captain. No Penguins fan wants to see that happen, though, because Penguins fans have so much affection for Tocchet. It'll be painful seeing him behind the Flyers bench if it does happen.
It's horrible. I can't even. It's just horrible. That being said, the best scenario then would be Rangers miss out, and Mr. Dolan strokes a really, really, really big check.
Because you got to think Laviolette gone,
in New York,
right?
though.
Better than Philly.
Yeah.
I don't. He could win 5 straight cups in New York. I'd be happy for him. I don't want to see him win a preseason split squad scrimmage when he's the Flyers coach.
I bet it's a really interesting thing. I know Rick very well, but I don't have any intel on this. I don't know if he knows what he wants to do. The Canucks were such a feel-good story last season. That team was good. They won a series. They gave Edmonton a great series in the second round, and they've just fallen apart this season. That team's got to be driving them nuts.
Maybe we should get him on, and he could announce live on the show like Aaron Rodgers is going to do on the Pat McAfee show or something.
Not the worst idea. We could try.
I've never. Rick has come seen me. He enjoys my comedy. I've texted with him. You know how much I love Rick Tocchet. There's no way he's turning down Philadelphia unless they add extra zeros in New York. In my mind,
he will be a hot commodity.
Unless Sully steps down and hands him the keys.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
I don't see that happening.
No, I don't think that might be best case scenario actually for anyone who doesn't want to see Rick in Philadelphia. But that's going to be a storyline this summer. I'm telling you, there's no question about it.
Yeah. And you were speaking about class of the Penguins fans, and I just want to say this. Not getting into politics, but yesterday they had the Canadian national anthem, and you know what all the Pittsburgh fans did? They sang it. They sang along with the national anthem and showed respect to it. So take note, Canada. You can have political differences and you can still sing the national anthem and not be booing it while it's going on. So I just had that little mental note yesterday during the game. I'm like, oh, everyone here, like, we're all having a good time. It's a great national anthem, by the way. It's way better than ours, like, as far as musically. It's one of the best. But
Jimerson wasn't good for him.
Oh, yeah, the best, Which, by the way, you remember the old skit on DVE when they were doing Mario's Casino, and they were like, "Oh, over the Blue Line Lounge, we got Jeff Jimerson performing every night. The obviously does everything from "Oh Canada" to the Star Spangled Banner, and that's about it."
The old what's funny is maybe I shouldn't even blame myself as I'm 0-4, 0-1 on the road and 0-3 at home. Is that I haven't caught Jimerson this year.
Maybe it's
he's taking the NBA schedule route this year.
I do like
he needs his what is it, Corey? Not rest. What do they call it? The
load management.
Yeah. Jimerson's under load management.
It's one of my favorite things at Penguins games when Jimerson is not the anthem singer and they announce somebody else. There's always kind of a hushed silence in the crowd. Everyone's like, "What the hell? Where's Jimerson?" Like everyone's kind of miffed always when it's not Jeff. It really throws people for a loop.
It throws me off. Remember Jimerson Gate when the one Vietnam vet or veteran of some service was like 5-0.
Oh yeah,
and he went on a run, and Jimerson almost took him on in a Hell in a Cell match.
I do remember that. Oh yeah, I think he wanted to. Also, in all seriousness, I do. I don't know that he would have won. Probably not. But yeah, that was quite the controversy. Was it Sergeant Bob or something, or was it
13?
Was it Sergeant Bob or Lieutenant Dan? That's Forrest Gump. Something like I don't know. It was something.
I think it was Sergeant Bob. I think it was.
Yeah, that was.
We might have to do a deep dive into that. We have to get Katie Strange on that the Athletic deep dive into that controversy.
You don't want her showing up. She wants to do a story. That's never good. That doesn't mean you've been doing good things. Usually,
I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I get on her enough in my other podcast because I know because my partner isn't affiliated with her, so I'm out to get a little deeper. The other thing with Jimerson, I just love Jimerson. My dad has seen him, has watched him sing, his other songs, his Journey repertoire.
Yeah.
No, but Jimerson should open up a Penn's gear stand. He has the best Penn's gear of anybody.
Yeah, he does.
I love his outfits.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's got some of the best stuff, and that hair. I mean, it's been, a staple of Pittsburgh. Like you could see that hair anywhere. You could be in like Germany, in the summertime, and he could be on vacation. You'd see that hair. You'd be like, oh, I know Jimerson's here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's the best, and it's just nothing better than Jimerson. He doesn't sing it like where he's trying to make a show out of it. He just sings it the right way. But
that's right.
But and then before we go, I mean, we went kind of long on a couple things, but have you guys seen the torpedo bats with the Yankees? So for those that don't know, they created a bat. They had like an MIT genius reconstruct and redesign the bat so that more wood is at the sweet spot, and it actually looks like a bowling pin, almost like the bottom of like a bowling pin where it gets narrower at the end of the barrel. And so they debut these bats. Half the Yankees use them and literally tie the record for most home runs in a Yankee game. And they have like 15 home runs through 3 games. So what are your guys' thoughts on the torpedo bats? If you've seen anything about it, and do you think it'll get banned? Should they ban it? or do you think everyone else is going to copy it and we're just going to have home run fests?
I think it's too early. I mean, the Yankees hit a lot of home runs as it is, and Aaron Judge hits a lot of home runs as it is. So,
and he doesn't use the bat, by the way.
Right. Oh, I thought he did. He doesn't?
No,
okay,
he doesn't.
It's only been 3 games. But, I mean, they did score 20 runs in their second game of the season. It might be a little concerning. I don't really care one way or the other. Maybe it'll make things entertaining. And clearly the Pirates aren't using the torpedo bats. I think that's the thing we can conclude more than anything.
Well, if they weren't given to him free, I'm sure nothing's never going to buy a new bat.
That is correct.
The Pirates probably use all the ones the Yankees give away on bat day. They probably send some stooge up there to take the free bats out of the kids' hands.
That's Chris Rock on whenever the Yankees went, or the Mets were going bankrupt. He was on Letterman the one night, and he's like, "We're so poor that we have, instead of bat night, we have bring a bat night. Everybody bring a bat for the players to use."
I've said for years the Pirates should just rent out that stadium to local softball teams and let them play there. They want to raise some, and it'd be cool to, like, your softball team can go play at PNC Park and you can enjoy all the food without having to watch the Pirates play.
I think Madden's idea for promotion one year was just to let a random fan play first base. We don't watch. It'd be funny as hell. Like, hey, Joe from Baldwin just made a nice catch.
And you wouldn't even know the difference.
No.
There's some beer leaguers in this world, in Western Pennsylvania. I've played a lot of beer league softball. There are some beer leaguers that they'd get out there and they'd make some great plays at first base.
Oh, yeah.
They'd muff a couple, but they'd make some great plays.
No, they would.
No, they look like they belong.
That's the most baseball talk we've done in a long time, Joe.
I
know. It was
Joe needs a drink.
It was fun though, because we weren't talking about the Pirates per se. Like I said, the debating on who should play. It's like I said, it's like the Washington Generals. Oh, who's going to play shooting guard for the Generals tonight? Does it really matter? Go enjoy your Permanis and your French fries and your view, and enjoy the fireworks, and that's it. But think they're going to win.
But hey, fans, I will say this: you just get to the Penguin games. The crowd is fantastic. You might not enjoy the Pirates, and the Penguins might not be winning, but they put the best product on the field or on the ice, on the stage, whatever you want to say, compared to the Steelers or the Pirates as of late. And nothing. I can't say anything more about Sidney Crosby. I mean, I can't say enough about Sidney Crosby and how great he's been. And so if you guys want to go, there's 3 home games left, right? I think
yes. You got the Blackhawks, the Bruins, and the Capitals.
Do yourself a favor, guys. I know the Penguins want you to buy the tickets from them on SeatGeek. Wait till the last minute. I bought them last minute, and they were pretty decent price. Yeah. My dad goes, as we're walking into the arena, he's like, check the tickets again, see if we could have got them better. You could have got a ticket for $23, an hour and a half before face-off. I was like,
listen, you still get to see Sidney Crosby at the height of his game, and I don't know how much longer he'll do it for. But he, like I said earlier, he's worth the price of admission right now. Yeah. He really is, whether they're going to be a playoff team or not, and obviously they're not. You still get to see him play, and you get in cheap right now if you want. Why not? What's stopping you?
I want to thank all the fans for listening and watching tonight. Is there any questions that we left unresolved? Because I answered that one nice ladies, but it seemed like we had a bunch fly by.
Sometimes I'll just put it up if it's a comment, so by the way, if all of you that please comment on it, because sometimes I'll just share it if it's a couple, but we did have a couple good questions that we ended up answering. I don't think there were any questions that were unresolved, but it's hard to keep up. That's what I'm like half in our conversation, half in the chat conversation that's going on. So I
saw one person I think tweeted at us or put on here that the Penguins have a brighter future than the Steelers or Pirates right now, and you actually might be right.
100%.
I mean, even though we think of the Penguins as an old team rebuilding, at least they have a plan.
Yeah,
and Crosby might still be great in 3 years, and if he is, well, they might actually have something sooner than you think. So,
I mean, he's not it's not that far off to think that they could be a team that makes the playoffs and win a round next year. We have a legit top 6. Think about Koivunen. I mean, I know we're going on and on, but you have Sid, Gino, Koivunen, McGroarty, Rust, Raquel, Like that's a top 6 that can make the playoffs. You know what I mean?
They're going to have, if they want to do so, they're going to have $25 million to spend this summer too. So they could make a splash. I don't know that they will. I don't know that that would even be prudent necessarily. But yeah, the future, this doesn't have to be some 5-year rebuilding program. They can be better a lot faster than that, especially in this conference.
No.
Well, we said all year or all summer, what do we need to do to make the playoffs? We need to get better power play and better goaltending. So we got a better power play. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Now we just need to bring up Mirishev.
Yep. Yeah. And
he finally lost a game. He's human. I can't believe it. And that will be the big question next year. You know, is he on the team out of training camp? Is he on the team at some point next? You know, and his play will dictate that. But I don't think he's that far away either.
No. So that's tons of sunshine on the horizon. It really isn't. I'd bet serious money if I could that the Penguins are going to make the playoffs in 2 years for sure.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's the year they're really targeting. Next year might be another tough one. I don't know. But the year after that, for sure, they're going to get aggressive at that point and really try to be good again.
Well, you think about it too. I mean, I know but like it all adds up. Sid might play beyond that year, but if that summer, if Sid does not sign an extension, and it's pretty much known that's his last year, and they're in a position to make a move, like talk about a dramatic season, like Sid's final year. Pens are pushing the chips into the center of the table. Oh my God, Josh is gonna have articles for days.
That's right. The problem with that is, and of course this is all, who knows how this will work out. I don't think Sid's the type to come out and say this will be my final season. So there will probably be some mystery because he's not going to want the farewell tour. But I'm not going to speak for Sidney Crosby, but if he's still playing like this or close to it in a year or two from now, and if he's still healthy, I don't know that he's going to retire at the end of this contract. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays a couple of years beyond that. If he's still enjoying himself, my God, why wouldn't he?
I'm telling you, watching him play, you're like, this guy is not exhausted. And somebody was saying that on the radio, I think they're saying Gretzky. I was reading about it. Gretzky actually talked about fatigue, like he kind of lost because Gretzky retired at 38.
I think he was, yeah.
And he just kind of was like mentally fatigued from playing hockey. And
Crosby's 10 times the player at 37 that Gretzky was.
It's
not a knock on Gretzky. Just, I mean, Crosby might be the best 37-year-old we've ever seen. So
I went back and looked. Honestly, this season reminds me so much of 02-03. Lemieux that year had like 92 points and played.
He was great in the first half. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, he was leading the league halfway through and you were like, oh my God.
Yep.
So this is probably, I think they were about age 37 season should have been roughly. So anyway,
speaking of Gretzky stats that have been, or they're being overcome, or records that are being overcome. That's one thing that really sticks in my craw way more than Mario getting screwed out of the MVP when he had 199 points is when he came back for the fourth time or the third time, his fourth stint is he lost his 2 points a game.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And that would be something that no one could ever take away from him.
Yeah. When he retired,
and no one would ever catch it.
When he retired in 97, he was at 2.01 points per game. In fact, and Gretzky, I think, was 1.92, and Mario finished at 1.88, finished just below it.
Well, he had it for the first 2 times he came back. He still had it.
Right.
It was the final time he came back. Remember, he just came back for Sid.
Right.
Yeah, that's when he lost it.
It was Sid's rookie year that it went down.
To put it in perspective, he didn't play hockey for 3.5 years. He comes out of retirement at age 35, puts up 76 points in 43 games, and his point per games in his career went down. Like, that's how good he was.
the people that like the younger fans, I wish they do what I do. I have my kids watching the old Mario VHSs on YouTube.
They're all on YouTube. It's worth it.
Like I do have one final thought. I mean, I know we're running along, but because I know Josh loves.
We started talking about Mario, so
No, but I know because I know Josh loves this guy as much as I do. It's everyone throws out that Jesus is the best player in the league right now. Okay, it's the gap with him and McKinnon, and this is no knock on Jesus. Closer and closer And closer. McKinnon
yeah.
is playing incredible. And to that extent, so is McCarr.
Yeah. And, I would say McDavid historically will go down as a slightly better player than McKinnon, but I cannot deny this, Joe. And I know, listen, McDavid won the Four Nations in overtime. Good for him. He was great. I'd rather have McKinnon in a big game.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That's not a knock on McDavid. He's been great in the playoffs the last 2 or 3 years, but McKinnon in big games, man, he's got that fire. He's got that. I don't know if it's people from Halifax. They just have that fire about them or what it is. I love McKinnon. Colorado, probably my closest thing to a mistress team. I love that. I just love watching them play. McCarr and McKinnon are obviously 2 of the 5 best players in the world. Yeah. And no, you're right. I mean, that's the thing. As great as McDavid is, and a couple of years ago, the gap was wider,
right?
I think. But when Gretzky in 1982 or Mario in '89, the gap was so much bigger than anyone else in the league, right? It's not quite like that with McDavid. That's not a knock on him. I think we're actually in an era when there's a lot of really, really great. Kucherov might be the most underappreciated player ever.
Oh,
what he's doing.
Absolutely no. I think like 2 or 3 years ago, I think it wasn't the Gretzky gap or the Mario gap, but there was a gap.
Yeah,
I'm just saying now it's not quite as cut and dry as conventional wisdom. Oh yeah, well the best, it's like, oh, Jordan's the best player ever. Like, I think there could be a debate now.
This is going to sound crazy, but McDavid, I think, turned 28 in January.
Yep.
So he's pushing 30 now. And that's when the greatest players of all time, that's usually the end of the peak.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's crazy to say that about him, but now with, training and everything, I realize that the age of the peak's probably a little older than it used to be. But if you look at Mario, Gretzky, Bobby Orr, the greatest players of all time, even Crosby and Ovechkin, their peak statistical seasons all came in the early to mid 20s. That's always the way it's been in hockey for the greatest players. So I'm interested to see how McDavid ages as he hits 30 and beyond. But the greatest asset in his game is his speed. So you wonder at 35 if he's still going to have these wheels. I wouldn't think he will.
No. And I mean, he doesn't have like, let's just say like a overpowering shot. I mean, he's a great playmaker, but somebody was saying, like to put in perspective, I don't know, it could have been written somewhere, Josh, it might have been in your article, I don't remember, but for McDavid to match what Sid has done, and that's the only person that could do it, you have to do it 11 more times.
11 more, well, at least, because Sid might do it again next year.
Yeah,
he probably will.
There's no everybody keeps. I keep doing it to him. Like, oh well, he got the 20, and it's like, well, I don't know. Like the way Sid's going, he might get the 22. Like,
I wouldn't bet against it.
He's just unbelievable, and we have so. I mean, we're so spoiled. I cannot. I cannot.
Even when the Penguins are rebuilding and stink, you still get to watch Sidney Crosby play every night at this level, so it's not all bad.
Absolutely. Well, hey everybody, this was great, and we appreciate all of you. Follow us all on Twitter or X or whatever they call it nowadays. Subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. I think if
maybe some post game fun. St. Louis game, Core. I don't know if we're doing that or not. Maybe
Thursday night. Joe, are you available Thursday night to do a post gamer?
We're asking Joe live.
I may be.
Okay.
I may be. I'm traveling that day.
I think we'll do that on Twitter, like a Twitter space, so that we can bring callers in. Do you want to do it that way?
As long as I don't get my ass kicked outside of the arena in St. Louis, we'll be good to go. It's in a rough part of town, and even if I do, it'd be entertaining for everyone. So I say we do it one way or the other.
I may just have to jump in. I may be traveling. I don't know if I can catch that game in its entirety. Of course, I watch it all afterwards.
That'll work. We'll figure it out. We'll let the viewers know.
I will be in Boca Raton this weekend, and then next weekend I'm at the San Diego Laugh Factory, and April 26th I'm at the Comedy Bar in Chicago.
Oh, all right.
Joe hitting the Florida, California, Chicago circuit. No small towns there. I like it.
No. Nah, you got to go big, go big or go home.
Yep.
and I can't go home.
Inside jokes are the greatest. I know.
That's phenomenal. I mean, it's not, but
anyway.
Yeah. Anyways, but we appreciate all you guys. If you're in one of those cities, check out Joe and keep your eyes peeled for a post game show after St. Louis, and we'll talk to you later.